This core has won every official VGC tournament with Regulation C rules since their inception. Let's look at how. There are a few times where teams have cropped up that have been considered the best compositions of their time due to their high tournament usage and success rates. There's Chalk in 2015, more recently Rinya Sun in 2022, and now the emergence of Palafin Balance, aka Palance. This core features Palafin, obviously, supported by other incredible Pokemon such as Fluttermane, Amoonguss, and Arcanine, and usually often paired with a Tinglu or in more niche cases, Chanpao. We've only had 3 official events with Regulation C rules, but Palance won all 3 of those tournaments: Sydney Regional Championships, Fort Wayne Regional Championships, and the European International Championships. The core also just saw a ton of usage overall, and the data really speaks for itself in terms of just how popular this team core has been. Individually looking at the Day 2 usage for these Pokemon between Fort Wayne, the first tournament of the format, and EUIC, the most recent, every single Pokemon has seen an increase in usage. Fluttermane started incredibly high, one of the highest used Pokemon we've ever seen at a whopping 74%, and still managed to increase in usage to 77% in Day 2 at EUIC. Palafin and Arcanine started around 30% and then rose to about 44%, and Amoonguss also increased by about 13% in usage. Day 2 usage statistics are important to look at because it implies that these Pokemon were successful as they were able to secure a 7-2 record or better, a good result. So what exactly is it about this core and these Pokemon that are making it successful? The Palance core predominantly features Palafin, Fluttermane, Amoonguss, and Arcanine. The true hero and centerpiece of the team is Palafin, a Pokemon that was introduced in Scarlet and Violet and one that top players had on their radar from the get-go thanks to its base stats, signature move, and signature ability. Palafin is a water-type Pokemon with an interesting ability that provides it with 2 forms of play. Its base baby dolphin form is called Zero Form, and once Palafin switches off of the field, it undergoes a transformation thanks to its Zero to Hero ability, and transforms into, you guessed it, its Hero Form. Once in Hero Form, Palafin gets about a 200 base stat buff with a super boost to its attack stat. That and having access to a powerful priority move in Jet Punch have made Palafin a meta contender. While it took some time for Palafin to come to the forefront of the meta, players still brought it to the San Diego Regional Championships, and 4 out of the top 32 teams featured a Palafin. One of those players was Gavin Michaels, who iterated on the team and later went on to win the Oceania International Championships, putting Palafin firmly on the map. Palafin started out by carrying Flip Turn, a water-type move that switches out the user upon connecting damage, which provided Palafin an easy way to access its Zero to Hero transformation. But players started to see more value in Palafin's Zero Form, as well as the options that a manual switch-out can provide, which saw the drop of Flip Turn in favor of Jet Punch and Wave Crash being its main damage-dealing moves. Back to Gavin Michaels, he had Haze on his Palafin that won him the Oceania International Championships, which quickly became part of the staple moveset alongside Protect. But every hero needs its sidekicks. One of Palafin's early partners was Pelipper, who was able to set the rain to increase the effectiveness of Palafin's water-type attacks, as well as set Tailwind to boost up Palafin's speed. But more recently, with the spike in power level we've seen from the Pokemon added to the pool of usable Pokemon, aka the Paradox Pokemon and the Treasures of Ruin, we've seen the emergence of the rest of the Avengers squad for Palafin in Fluttermane, Arcanine, and Amoonguss. Arcanine really is Hero's best friend. Arcanine helps slow the pace of the game down if you lead it next to Palafin. Not only does it give an Intimidate drop to help check physical attackers that may make an early appearance, but Arcanine also poses another threat in Will-O-Wisp, another way to keep physical damage in check. That type of pressure forces an opponent to think about switching out to reset the drops, giving Palafin valuable time to switch out itself. Not to mention, Arcanine also usually carries extreme speed, providing another option for priority damage. Old dogs can learn some new tricks though, and one tech choice that's been cropping up lately for Arcanine is the status move Howl, which increases the attack stat of itself and its ally, looking at you Palafin, by 1 stage. This makes both Arcanine and Palafin even more lethal, and to top it off, sometimes you'll see Arcanine and Palafin paired with a Chanpao, whose signature ability, Sword of Ruin, drops the defense stat of all other Pokemon. Amoonguss is doing Amoonguss things, being an incredibly versatile Pokemon that can fit onto many teams, and fulfill the last piece of a Fire Water Grass core. A Fire-Water Grass core is a stable team-building core that has worked on teams for several generations of games now. This core covers each other's weaknesses, giving it a lot of options for defensive switches. Defensive switches are highly valuable in the current format because the Treasures of Ruin's abilities, that drop other Pokemon's stats, make the positional game more complex, requiring more thoughtful board positioning. So not only does Amoonguss provide for a great defensive switch, but it can switch for a long time thanks to its Regenerator ability, restoring 1/3 of its HP when it switches out. And with great staying power comes great responsibility, since Amoonguss is still needed for Spore to put Pokemon to sleep, and Pollen Puff. Pollen Puff is a bug-type attack that deals damage to opposing Pokemon, but heals allies. The healing component makes Pollen Puff so valuable, and having a bug-type attack in a dark-type world is nice coverage to have too. Speaking of Splashable, do you remember how I said that Fluttermane had 77% usage in Day 2 of the European International Championships? Well, yeah, it's because Fluttermane is so good too. Fluttermane covers the special attacking role that is noticeably lacking from the Palafin Amoonguss Arcanine core. On top of Fluttermane's incredibly high special attack stat of 135, it also has one of the best offensive typings in the game as a dual-type Ghost Fairy Pokemon. No single type resists both. Fluttermane is also a great check for some pesky niche strategies that could otherwise cause problems for the main trio, like the notorious Mousehold and Annihilate combo, Goldengo that's rising in popularity again, as well as the niche Dragon-type Pokemon like Dragapult. Fluttermane is an incredibly versatile Pokemon that can be built in several ways. It started more of an all-out offensive threat with a lot of speed investment, but lately has been trained to be a bit more on the bulky side, allowing Fluttermane to stay alive longer. On Palance, it will usually carry Choice Specs or a special attack boosting Booster Energy. Both sets will have Dazzling Gleam and Shadow Ball for same type attack bonus damage. But with Booster Energy, you have the option of carrying any combination of Moonblast, Protect, or even Substitute, which makes great use of Fluttermane's bulk investment. With a Choice Spec set, you can lean more into the coverage options that Fluttermane has access to, like Power Gem, Thunderbolt, and Energy Ball. That's really Palance in its current iteration. You've got Palafin with Wave Crash, Jet Punch, Haze, and Protect, Arcanine with Flare Blitz, and some combination of Extreme Speed, Howl, Protect, and Will-O-Wisp, the standard Amoonguss set, and Fluttermane with either Choice Specs or Booster Energy. But there are some players that are starting to break the mold and put their own unique spin on the team. The European International Championship Masters Finals is the perfect example of a player taking a defined core and changing it ever so slightly to fit their own unique playstyle. While Paul Chua ran the pretty stock standard Palance core, Gabriel Legati modified his Palance core to play better into the mirror. One change in particular I want to point out is that Gabriel dropped Haze on Palafin in favor of Substitute. Substitute allows Gabriel's Palafin to stay alive longer in the mirror, but also led to Gabriel putting Clear Smog on his Amoonguss over Protect. These choices were a calculated risk, because not having Haze on Palafin makes the Dondozo matchup more difficult, and not having Protect on Amoonguss in an open Team Shoot format makes the Amoonguss an easier target. Ultimately, Paul Tua walked away with the EUIC Championship title, after a little bit of luck and a lot of skill. But Gabriel still is showing that there is a lot of room for the Palance core to grow. Despite its popularity, the core itself is still pretty difficult to run, and that's made even more difficult with the inclusion of Ting-Lu or Qianpao. Both Gabriel and Paul ran Ting-Lu on their teams, with no fissure. They are honorable players. This is a great time to remind everybody that running fissure on your Ting-Lu will bring dishonor on you and dishonor on your cow. But yeah, positioning. Because of the Treasures of Ruin dropping stats with their abilities, you have to be even more thoughtful about your board position. But both Ting-Lu and Qianpao are often seen on a team with a Palance core. Qianpao with its Sword of Ruin ability dropping defense gives your Palafin and Arcanine more oomph, and Ting-Lu grants ground-type coverage as well as a great defensive switch, while also allowing you to invest outside of special defense for your other Pokemon. The Regulation C meta has a ton of room for growth, and much like what we saw with Rinya's Sun and Sword and Shield, these early tournament successes doesn't necessarily mean that the core is going to continue to win out. Palafin is public enemy number 1 right now, and everyone is trying to figure out how to best break it. There's some cute ideas cooking, like Sandy Shocks and Rotom, since they can both hit Palafin super effectively, but only time will tell if Palafin will survive the onslaught of wannabe heroes long enough to become the villain. And this is where I add an extra section talking about how Palafin didn't win the most recent Regulation C official tournaments. At both Sao Paulo and Portland, we saw unique teams win it all. Joaquin Salerno brought Orthworm of all things, and Joseph Ugarte won Portland with a Sun team featuring Jumplove. Not only are both of these players incredibly skilled, but we've also reached a point in the meta life cycle where players have started to figure out how to beat the Palance matchup, either through tech that they've included onto their team, or just changing up their team composition altogether. Palance didn't have too many individual appearances at Portland. A few more at Sao Paulo, but overall, players didn't bring it as much to either tournament. So now with that knowledge, we will see whether or not Palafin can make a comeback and still find success deep into the Regulation C rule set.